Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for being the reason my grandparents refused to help my dad anymore and laughing when he and his wife complained about it? My mom died when I, 16 was 7. She left me an inheritance that my dad was put in charge of. The money was supposed to be for my future and nobody was supposed to touch it unless I really needed it, and it was pretty specific. I read through it 5 months ago when crap went down. My dad got married again when I was 10 and he has an 8-year-old stepdaughter and now a 4-year-old daughter with his wife Louise. My half-sister was diagnosed with a rare condition when she was 2. It was always clear something was wrong, but they had a really hard time figuring out what it was. Doctors would say she'd be fine when she was older. This condition isn't life-threatening, like she won't die from it, but it could potentially leave her permanently disabled in a bad way. A few months ago they found out about this hard to get into treatment for it. But it was expensive. There was ways to get help paying for it, but that takes longer. So my dad decided he would use the inheritance mom left me to pay for it. He tried asking me, but he was going to do it anyway, and when I said no he told me as much. Then he shamed me for saying no, for putting college before the health of my half-sister. Louise was in the room with us, but she wasn't talking before I said no. She asked me how I could look at my half-sister at the life she will have if we don't do something and say no. I told my dad I would never forgive him if he took the money. After I read her will, grandparents had a copy, I brought up the fact it was only for my needs it could be spent before. He told me mom was dead and he hoped she'd understand. I told him I never would. He told me I'd understand when I'm older. I told him I hated him and I told Louise she better never speak to me again because I found it disgusting she'd encourage stealing from me and taking my mom's money. I told my grandparents what dad did. They're my mom's parents but had stayed friendly with dad and there were times they would help him. They shared stuff with him all the time and grandpa would look at dad's car for free if anything was wrong. That all stopped when I told them. Dad couldn't figure out why until he confronted them about it last week. They told him he had some nerve stealing from me, taking their daughter's money and spending it on his child. My dad was mad they didn't understand and support his decision. He confronted me about it and complained about what I did. I laughed and told him I had warned him I would never forgive him for it. He asked how I got to be so heartless and selfish. I told him I would never forget what he did. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. That was your money, not your dad's money. It might have been stolen from you in a good cause, but it was stolen from you, and that's illegal. Please have your grandparents find you a lawyer. Your dad is going to have to pay you back what he took from you. You don't get to steal from your kid. Talk with a lawyer. Get your money back. Your stepsister has already benefited from it, now it's time for your dad to find a way to repay you. Every cent. Your dad's feelings and needs are not a lawful reason to ignore a will. He's broken the law, and while it may end up more expensive than the inheritance in question to pursue it, it's an avenue you can take. At the very least, your father should be made very aware that speaking to your grandparents is the kindest thing you could have done for him, because the legal options, which are likely very open to you still, would have been far worse. He has no right to speak for the dead either. That will was your mother's final word on her estate. If she wanted to provide for your father and his future, including new children and partners, she'd have damn well left it for him. You can, and should, organize for a lawyer via your grandparents. This is theft and it can be pursued civilly, at your expense, or criminally, at the state's expense. I like option 2 as the prospect of a prison sentence tends to focus people's attention. Either way your dad needs to pay back the money he stole from you, either all at once, or to an agreed schedule of installments. Next story. Am I the a-hole for giving my daughter's things back that were taken away as punishment? I'm 31 and my husband is 30. Our daughter is 7, and she found a puppy in the front yard and played with it. Turns out it belonged to our neighbors, who were looking for it. They accused her of stealing it, and my husband gave her extra chores. She refused to do them, saying she didn't steal the puppy. The neighbors came to apologize a bit later, as their son confessed to losing the puppy on a walk when he took its leash off. That's how it ended up on our yard. I came home that evening and my husband explained this. He said she should be disciplined for not doing the chores. I said she was right to not accept unearned punishment. He said it's the principle, and she should listen to her father. I said I would rather die than teach her that she should lay down and accept mistreatment. We argued and he called me unreasonable. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. I got into it with my husband one time years ago. My oldest son, from first marriage, was maybe 12 at the time. Making a box of mac and cheese for lunch for himself and little brother. When it came time to put in the butter, he did exactly what he'd seen me do dozens of times, slice it up so it melts faster before pouring in cold milk. For some reason, husband took issue with him cutting up this little quarter stick of butter. Told him to just drop it in and stir it up and it will melt just fine. My son finished slicing it up while hubby got more irritated. I stepped in trying to explain he's just doing it how he's seen me do it, and trying to figure out why the hell it was such a big deal, like am I missing something that's wrong about slicing butter? Turned out that husband got mad because my son didn't immediately do what he said. We had a really long discussion about that kind of attitude. Fortunately he learned his lesson on what is important to make an issue out of and what isn't. And slicing butter is not a major issue. Not the a-hole. Your husband needs to grow the F up. Part of being a person, especially an adult, is knowing when to admit you made a mistake and apologizing for it. It doesn't matter if it's to a child or another adult. He is being unreasonable. It's one thing to consider the words of a stranger and then listen to your child. People will lie, or misunderstand, that goes for kids and adults. Why would your husband believe your child was capable of stealing someone's pet? That's a pretty clear I know my kid didn't do this type of thing. And usually rephrasing a question or explaining things gets a kid that young to admit what they did even if inadvertently. The biggest takeaway here is that strangers came back to apologize for their accusation, but dad can't manage to apologize to his own child not only for not believing her, but levying a punishment with zero facts. No one should blindly listen to an adult when the adult is wrong. That sets a terrible precedent of a child not knowing when it's safe to refuse anything from unwanted contact from a family member or being forced to do something they know is wrong. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my brother-in-law pay for a vacation after he's repeatedly called me a gold digger? I, 30F, have been married to my husband, 32M, for 5 years. We both work hard and are pretty comfortable financially. My husband does earn more than I do, but we've always seen it as our money. We're a team and split responsibilities equally. The issue is my brother-in-law, 34M. For years, he's made these jokes about me being a gold digger because my husband earns more. It's always in front of people, and while I usually just laugh it off to avoid making things awkward, it really bothers me. I've always worked, I contribute to our household, and it's frustrating to have that constantly dismissed like I'm just living off my husband. Recently, my brother-in-law and his wife asked us to help cover their part of a family vacation because they can't afford to go on their own. My husband and I talked about it, and while we could help, I really don't feel comfortable after all the times he's disrespected me. When I said no, my brother-in-law tried to laugh it off, saying I was overreacting and that it was all just harmless jokes. I'm honestly over it. Now he's upset, and my in-laws are saying I'm making a big deal out of nothing, and that family helps family. My husband has my back, but I can't help second-guessing myself. Am I being too sensitive here? Am I the a-hole for refusing to help because of how he has been treating me? Top comments. Not the a-hole. It blows my mind how often people get called out on their BS and fail to properly apologize. Brother-in-law could very easily have said something like, "I'm sorry, you are rightly calling me out on this item as I see how my asking for money after teasing you about being a gold digger comes off very badly. I thought I was joking, but it is clear now that my comments were hurtful and were not actually funny. I am sorry for that and won't make those comments in the future. Perhaps if he had done that you might have reconsidered. But instead he told you the jokes were harmless, likely said you were overreacting, and then got your in-laws involved. Poor choice. Not the a-hole. I wouldn't give them a dime, much less for a non-essential vacation. Have a sit-down with your husband. He needs to be defending you when his brother denigrates you at family events." Opie replies. My husband is very protective when it comes to me and is definitely not shy when it comes at defending me in front of my family. I know he clearly doesn't believe the stupid jokes my brother is telling, but it just hurts to hear them. You can help him and destroy him with similar jokes that he can't even pay for his wife. OP replies. I thought about doing that, haha, but then a thought kicked in that I am not like him, nor do I want to be like him, so that's why I didn't do it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother's fiancée to grow up and stop trying to put her anger and trauma on me? My brother, Matt, 30M, is engaged to Evelyn, 32F. Matt is our parents' bio son. I'm 25F, their adopted daughter. We have another sister who is a bio and 2 more brothers who are adopted. Our parents fostered many kids and adopted some of us. I always knew I was adopted. I was removed from an unsafe environment and didn't have any safe bio relatives. My bio family is tiny in terms of known, and none of them are good people. I'm glad I was adopted. I feel so lucky to have found a family who embraced the fact we were not biologically connected but loved us the same and didn't try to make it shameful. Those of us who were adopted have our own circumstances for being so. One of my brothers was orphaned and his biological parents wanted a family who would love and take care of him, and he got that with us. Matt's fiancée Evelyn was adopted as an infant and she has a lot of feelings about that. I understand why she has some complicated feelings regarding being adopted, and why she feels like her parents bought a child because they wanted one versus wanting to give a child a good life. Her adoptive parents wanted to erase her bio side and shamed her for ever having an interest in it, and they talked badly about her birth family her whole life. I don't think that was right or okay. But Evelyn is obsessed with making every adoptee feel the same way she does. She has spoken negatively about my parents robbing 3 kids of their rights to have legal access to their biological family history and identity. She has suggested I was brainwashed by CPS into believing I was removed for safety reasons from my birth family and had no safe birth relatives. Spoiler alert, all my known birth relatives have all been to prison multiple times, and yes, I looked them up. She has told me I'm just traumatized and afraid to speak out and say I was denied my real family. I told her that's not how I feel. She told me it's how we all feel. That adopted kids are products in the US. I told Matt I couldn't take that. And I'd need to see him and Evelyn less if she can't stop. She keeps seeking me out though, and on Saturday, while she was in my parents' home and tried to bring it up again, I snapped. I couldn't stand her talking like that about the people who was in the home of, and I told her to grow up and accept people are different because only kids think everyone should feel the same, and that she needed to stop putting her anger and trauma on me because we don't feel the same. She said I was spiteful, throwing that in her face. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. What does your brother do while she sits in your parents' home and talks crap about them? Do your parents know? OP replies. He doesn't say anything in front of us. Our parents know. I didn't know it, but they were aware before too. They feel bad that her experience left her feeling as she does. Not the a-hole. The point is that there's a topic the two of you have a strong disagreement about. It doesn't even matter that this is specifically about adoption, it could be about anything: adoption, politics, religion, etc. You very reasonably ask that she stop talking about it, and she, very rudely, refuses. You are absolutely correct that she's projecting her crap onto you. She keeps bringing it up because she's not trying to convince you. She's trying to convince herself that her entire worldview is the correct one because she's invested so much mental and emotional energy into it over the years. You are well within your rights not to want to spend time around her anymore. You've made the situation clear to your brother, and it's really up to him at this point if he wants to speak about it with Evelyn, but it's no longer your responsibility to do so. Not the a-hole. In advocacy spaces there's a few golden rules, things like don't talk about us without us, i.e. don't represent us without letting us talk too. And a big one is, experiences may vary, and I cannot talk for you because I haven't walked in your shoes, i.e. what you've experienced I cannot imagine because I haven't lived your life. Evelyn is failing on both of those. Probably more. Has she got an adoption fetish? Is that why she's with your brother? How does he feel about all this nonsense? Not her, but the crap she's talking, and how will he reconcile this with having children with her? OP replies. I think she has become so bitter about the flaws in the adoption system and the bad outcome she got, that she can't accept there are people who have benefited from it too. I don't believe adoption is part of the reason she's with him, because she found out about some of us being adopted months into their relationship. Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at a woman and her autistic daughter after they almost knocked me into the subway tracks? So this happened yesterday on my way to somewhere after work. I had just gotten off the subway and was walking on the platform to the stairs. It was a bit crowded since it was rush hour, so I walked across the platform, so I was walking closer to the opposite track. While I'm walking, someone crashes into my side and knocks me into the yellow part of the platform that you're not supposed to stand on while waiting for a train. People who have been to NYC will know what I am talking about. I almost lost my balance, and to make matters worse, a train was pulling in. I look in front of me, and I see two women walking by. One woman was walking in front and the other younger woman has holding on to the back of her backpack and swinging back and forth and not paying any attention to how she was walking. I yelled, "Hey, watch it." They just kind ignored me or didn't hear me, and I went closer to them and yelled again, "Hey, I'm talking to you, watch where you're going." The woman in front turned around and told me not to yell at her and her daughter, the younger woman, but still an adult, because she was autistic and was sensitive in the subway. I told her that she and her daughter needed to be more careful because she almost knocked me into the tracks. The woman told me I was being rude and insensitive to her daughter's disability and stormed off. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Autistic person here and mother to autistic kids. What they did was dangerous. I understand how it could happen, but her nonchalant attitude about it was messed up. She should have immediately helped you and apologized and explained that her daughter wasn't being malicious, just overstimulated and unaware. Her attitude was way wrong and you had every right to be upset and say what you said. Not the a-hole. This was your one time to pick a place that you liked. Your uncle wanted to honor you for your birthday. That's crazy that you can't even go to your preferred places when your step-siblings are not around. And it's also crazy that your parents forced your uncle to include them. Good for you for finally getting to enjoy a special meal. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my friend to stop mentioning pictures my wife posts? I've got a friend who the last couple of years has turned a bit tatty. He has been wronged by a couple of women in the past couple of years. One left him and got married within 3 months, the other stole a lot of his money, but he seems to have a particular dislike for women selling content or just generally being confident in how they look. That point brings me on to my wife. She's 39 and we've been together since school. She's a very fit and attractive woman and her main hobby is pole dancing. She loves it and has been doing it for a few years. She's really good and she loves it so much. It's great to see her really excelling at something and being so passionate about it. She posts a lot of pictures and video of herself pole dancing on accounts that only friends can follow, so it's not like she does this for attention, even though I've told her if she ever wanted to I wouldn't mind, as a few of her friends have quite big followings, and sometimes when they do shows my wife is in the photos and videos and gets a lot of positive comments. At the weekend I went to my friend's to help him with some DIY and he asked me if I mind my wife posting what she posts. I said not at all, it doesn't bother me. He then said, "You're part of the problem. Women are getting too much ego and it's bad enough when it's single women, but married women shouldn't be doing that." I told him if he's that bothered then don't look and unfollow her. He said that won't change anything and it's the culture being created around women getting validation for their bodies or some crap like that. I got a bit wound up at this point and asked him if he'd like to ring my wife and tell her himself. He said no, he was just talking to me man to man and I need to grow a backbone. I told him I'm not the one with the backbone problem if he can't handle a bit of flesh and gets offended by it, and he's the weak one. I ended up leaving and a few mutual friends have said that while I was right, he's going through a hard time and is a bit vulnerable to this way of thinking. I personally think that's crap and we need to tell him he's heading down a wrong path. Me and my friend are both 41, I forgot to mention that. TLDR, friend is heading down a Tate wormhole and said my wife shouldn't be posting pictures of herself pole dancing. I told him to grow up and not be so easily offended. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Good job standing up for your wife's right to enjoy a hobby and be confident. I agree with you about letting him know you, and hopefully your other friends, don't agree with these new views he's taking on. If the people around him just let his comments go without any pushback or worse, agreement, it'll only make him feel validated and justified and more comfortable with these new views. He needs to understand that just because he's been hurt by 2 women, doesn't give him the okay to be a misogynist. Even without all that, what business is it of his what your wife does anyways? Opie replies. Exactly. My wife can do as she pleases. She's a grown woman and I'm not jealous or possessive in any way. I love watching her express herself and how happy she is when she shows me videos of what she's done. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.